Imagine yourself as a child and not being able to play whenever you want, but expected to work all day long. What if you were denied an education when all you wanted to do was learn? Many of us cannot begin to fathom not being free to do the things that we like. One man, Booker T. Washington, did not have to imagine these circumstances because for him it was a reality. Despite being born a slave, he overcome prejudice to receive an education and went on to become a famous African-American leader. Like Booker T. Washington, this group of my audience and myself chose education as a career. And our community, many people in our community have overcome obstacles in order to gain success. Utilizing books, magazines, and newspaper articles, I have researched Booker T. Washington and can tell you how he rose above prejudice to become a famous leader. This is one man's journey of overcoming prejudice to become a famous American leader. Today you are going to hear about Booker T. Washington's childhood, his education, and his famous leadership. First, I will tell you about his childhood. Booker T. was born into slavery on a small Virginia plantation in 1800s before the Civil War. His mother was a slave and cook to Mr. Burroughs, the plantation owner, who was a white man. They lived in a tiny one-room cabin with no door or windows, and they didn't have any beds, so they slept on the floor. As a child of a slave, Booker was expected to carry out many duties. He carried water to the workers in the field, kept flies away from Mr. Burroughs' dinner table, and was expected to carry the books for Mr. Burroughs' daughter and walk her to school each day. Now, Booker wanted to attend school too, but according to Gosda in his 2002 book, Booker T. Washington, slaves were not allowed to go to school, and Booker was expected to work all day long. In 1865, President Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation ending slavery. Booker and his family were no longer slaves, so they moved to Malden, West Virginia, and lived with his stepfather. Now, Booker was not allowed to be a child here either because he was expected to work in the salt mines. He would, according to Gosda in his 2002 book, Booker T. Washington, Booker would wake up at 4 each morning and did not get home until after dark. This is a picture of the tiny shack where Booker and his family lived on the Burroughs plantation. This is from Gosda's 2002 book, Booker T. Washington. I have shared with you Booker's childhood. Now I will tell you about his education. Booker's family was poor and needed him to work in the salt mine, so again, he was not able to go to school. He would still study at night and taught himself to read and write. When Booker was older, he went to work for the wife of the man who owns the salt mines. Now, she was very demanding, and Booker had to clean excessively, but she also allowed him to study for a time in the afternoons. Around the age of 16, Booker heard about the Hampton Normal Agricultural Institute for African Americans. Booker wanted to attend the school, but it was 500 miles away. He was not going to let this interfere with his education, so he traveled until he ran out of money, and then he walked many, many miles to reach Hampton. Now, he loved going to school, and he would go to school during the day and would clean the school at night to pay for his room and his meals. While at Hampton, Washington was guided by the school's founder, Samuel Armstrong. Bean and Beto wrote in their 2009 article, A Strong Foundation, they said, Armstrong tried to instill the habits of hard work and good character in his students and advised them to live down prejudice. Booker excelled under his leadership and graduated from Hampton with honors. After graduation, he returned back home to Malden, where he taught for many years. When a white man beginning a school for Black Americans contacted Armstrong, he recommended Washington. Washington became the first president of Tuskegee Normal and Industrial Institute. I have told you about Booker's education. Now we will talk about his leadership. One way Booker became famous is through his work at Tuskegee College in Alabama. Under Washington, the students were trained in liberal arts and industrial labor such as carpentry and agriculture. His first class was small, but the school grew and earned a national reputation for excellence. Washington used charisma and determination to convince the wealthiest men in the U.S. to support the institution. According to Bean and Vito in their 2009 article, A Strong Foundation, they said, Tuskegee was enrolling 1,000 black students, more than the two leading white institutions combined in the state. Another way Washington affected American culture was through speaking. Booker was a good speaker and gained attention because of his speeches. Washington delivered one of the opening speeches at the Cotton States and International Exposition in Atlanta. Speaking to a mixed racial group, he encouraged blacks to forget their desire for social and civil equality and to make themselves an essential part of the nation's economy through production and education. Because of this speech, called the Atlanta Compromise, he gained the supports of whites and blacks and was known as a prominent speaker for many years. Lee Walker stated in his article titled A Fresh Look at Dr. Booker T. Washington's Legacy on April 8, 2005, he stated, Washington's social, economic, and educational vision is just as relevant today as it was 100 years ago. Some may claim it is even more relevant on the important issue of practical education for black Americans. The U.S. government honored Booker by placing him on 2 postage stamps, one of his face and the other of his birthplace. He was honored yet again when his face appeared on a 50-cent piece. This was one man's journey and how he overcome prejudice to become a famous African-American leader. Today you heard about Booker's Washington's childhood, his education, and his famous leadership. We can all learn from Booker T. Washington. Although we can't imagine what it was like to not have a carefree childhood, many of us have struggled to overcome obstacles on our road to success. We must never, ever give up on our dreams and do whatever we can to reach our goals in life. Thank you.